Yeah, good morning, students. In the last class, we had a discussion on out of order execution of the instructions and branch predictions. We had the discussion on that particular topic. So, today's classroom discussion is on what we are calling it as the dispatch operation and pipelining in CISC processors. So now I would like to share my screen. So the dispatch operation and pipelining in CISC processors. So the lecture objectives are this session will develop the students' knowledge on dispatch operation and the issues dispatch operation and the issues related to the pipelining in CISC processors. So till now we had a discussion on the issues related to the pipelining in RISC processors. So now we had a discussion on pipelining issues in CISC processors. Now, first of all, we would like to define what is the dispatch operation. So the dispatch unit which we had in a superscalar processor must ensure that all the resources needed for the execution of an instruction are available. So whatever the resources that are required for execution of an instruction, so it is the responsibility of this particular unit, dispatch unit, to ensure that all the resources are available for execution of that instruction. For example, consider this scenario. Since the result of an instruction may have to be written in a temporary register and it is reserved for use by that instruction as a part of the dispatch operation. So there must be a space available in the reservation station of an appropriate execution unit. So finally, a location in the reorder buffer for later commitment of results must also be available for the instruction. So when all the resources needed are assigned, the instruction is dispatched. So then how do we dispatch these out of order instructions? So the dispatch of load instruction may be delayed because there is no space in the reservation station of load or store unit. Okay, so we have to delay this load instruction because there is no space in the reservation station of load and store unit as a result of a cache miss in a previously dispatched instruction. So should the subtract instruction be dispatched instead of that load or store? So in principle, this is possible because this provides all the resources needed by the load instruction, including a place in the reorder buffer, are reserved for it. So then what is the deadlock? So the deadlock is nothing but consider a superscalar processor that has only one temporary register. So when the subtract instruction is dispatched before the load instruction, the temporary register is reserved for that subtract instruction. So the load instruction cannot be dispatched because it is waiting for the same temporary register, which in turn will not become free until the subtract instruction is retired. So since the subtract instruction cannot be retired before the load instruction, so we have a deadlock situation. That means deadlock is nothing but two instructions are wanted to use the same resource. Here the same resource is nothing but a temporary register which is used by this load instruction as well as the subtract instruction. So subtract instruction is holding this temporary register, then the load instruction wanted this register, it has to wait. So that is the situation which we are calling it as a deadlock situation. So issuing instructions out of order is likely to increase the complexity of the dispatch unit significantly. So it may also mean that more time is required to make dispatching decisions. So dispatching instructions in order avoids this complexity. So what we are doing in this particular case, the program order of instructions is enforced at the time instructions are dispatched and again at the time they are retired. So between these two events, the execution of several instructions across multiple execution units can proceed out of order subject only to independencies among them. Fine. So now the reflection point is that, so the question for you is that, so what is a deadlock? Define a deadlock situation. Fine. Now we will come to this second objective of this today's session is that how the pipelining is implemented in the risk processors. So the complications arises when we are implementing the pipelining in the risk processors because of this following reasons. Because of this following reasons, instructions that are variable in size, CISC processors will follow that the instruction length may be varied from instruction to instructions, and we have a multiple memory operands and complex addressing modes are available in the CISC. So and the CISC process will uses condition codes, and instructions that occupy more than one word may take several cycles to fetch, and variability in instruction size and formats complicates both the decoding and the operand access as well as the management of the dispatch queue in a superscalar processor. So these are the different issues that will arise when we are implementing the pipelining in the CISC processors. So the availability of more complex addressing modes such as auto increment or auto decrement introduces the side effects when executing these instructions. So a side effect occurs when a location other than that of the destination operand is also affected. For example, consider this instruction move R5, R8 plus as a side effect because here we are making use of this auto increment on R8 register. So not only is the destination register R5 affected, but the source register R8 is also affected by auto increment operation. Then examples, if you consider that pipelining in CISC processors, cold file processors is one examples which uses this CISC pipelining. So the cold file version 1 and version 2 have two pipelines in series with a first in first out buffer between them. So a two-stage instruction fetch pipeline prefetches instructions into the buffer. This buffer then feeds a two-stage pipeline that executes the instructions. So instructions that involve register only or register to memory operations pass once through the two execution stages. So instructions that involve memory to register or memory to memory operations must take two passes through the execution stages. So, later versions of cold fire processors implementations use a similar buffer arrangement between two pipelines, but they incorporate various enhancements for higher performances. So, the instruction fetch pipeline in version 4 is extended to 4 stages and includes branch predictions. So the execution pipeline is extended to 5 stages. The early stages are used for address calculation and the later stages are used for arithmetic or logic operations. So version 5 implementations have two distinct execution pipelines based on V4 organization. Then next coming to this pipelining in Intel processors, if you see that as an example for CISC processor pipelining. So this is a second example. So Core 2 and Core i7 architectures have multiple issues with of 4 instructions and 14 stage pipeline. So branch predictions, register renaming, out of order execution and other techniques are implemented in these Intel processors also. So to reduce internal complexity, CISC style instructions are dynamically converted by the hardware into a simpler RISC style micro operations, and then they are executed these micro operations to be executed in sequence to complete the task specified by the original CISC style instructions. So in some cases, these micro operations are fused back together into the micro operations for more efficient handling. So now coming to these LOs which are revisited now here, the lecture objectives are this session will develop students knowledge on dispatch operation as well as the issues related to the pipelining in CISC processors. So the summary of this today's session is that dispatch unit is responsible for dispatching the instructions which are completed, and the deadlocks are handled by executing the instructions in sequence, and the pipelining in the CISC processors is more complex, so it can be two possible implementations are available. So that we have seen in this one example is the Intel processors, and another example is the cold fire processors in which this pipelining in CISC process is implemented. So the lecture outcomes are like this. After completion of this session, you will be able to analyze the dispatch operation and identify the issues related to the pipelining in CISC processors. So the lecture level practice problem is that they compare pipelining in cold fire as well as the Intel processors. So any doubts you have, students, if you have any doubts, let me clarify those doubts. So if you don't have any doubts now, I will stop my session. So thank you students for joining for today's class. Thank you.